All right, so with a little bit of technical difficulty, we are joined from Southern New Jersey by player 258 from Squid Game Challenge, the
Woo!
traveling Brownie,
Yeah.
up and coming YouTuber, Amanda Brown. We thank you so much for joining us today. We've got a room full here with us at Velma Jackson High School of juniors and seniors in high school. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools and for our YouTube channel. So we thank you so much for joining us today. Now, before we get into the Squid Game challenge, because we all watched it and it's really cool, you have an incredible story with your family and growing up in the New Jersey area, and we would love to hear kind of your background before you were on TV of your family and your education.
So it is actually very interesting. I have been in New Jersey, born and raised, and of course they're doing construction right outside this office as soon as I start. But I have always wanted to work for Doctors Without Borders. So that was my main goal since I was 7 years old. I started watching this show called Grey's Anatomy, which is somehow still on the air today. But I always wanted to become a neurosurgeon and work for Doctors Without Borders. So that was one of my main motivators for going to school and just kind of like getting out there and traveling mostly. I did not grow up in a very affluent area, to say the least. My family is very large, but we were never very well off. And around the age of 14, which was my sophomore year in high school, I went to high school very early. My mom, she came down with some very, very serious health issues. So she's been permanently disabled since I was 14 years old.
Mm.
I recently last week turned 28. So it's been a long road. And everything I've pretty much done up until this point, education wise, work wise, like working in the healthcare field, working pretty much all over the world. Everything I do is to pretty much just make her proud and to try to build a better life for us all. I was going on Squid Games hoping to win that 4.56 million, just to get her that the healthcare she actually deserves, not just what we can afford, because by no means am I a rich person even to this day. So it's definitely just been my biggest driving force is to just make her proud and to buy her a home because we've never really had a home to call our own. We grew up in like the city, so it's just like apartment living and just things like that. But with a bigger family, sometimes it can get a little hard. But yeah, it's super simple story, although it has a lot to it. I could always go more in depth, but my main motivation is just my family and taking care of them because they deserve it and we just deserve to have an easy life just like some other people.
Absolutely. Now, and I've watched a couple of your interviews, and you said that when you were interviewing to go on Squid Game, you were 100% transparent and honest from the beginning. You were honest about your mother, and you were honest in saying you'd been homeless a couple times.
Yeah.
So obviously, we may have some people that have struggled with that that'll see this. So you don't have to tell us how it happened, but obviously it did happen, and you overcame that. So if somebody has struggled with that, what was your way to overcome that? Because that's an obstacle that people face every day in this country.
Yeah, it is honestly, and it's very sad, which is why now I am in the line of work that I'm in now, which is working with insurances and doing things like that. Because if my mom did have the proper insurance and she was covered properly, we could have, had something to fall back on because she didn't have any sort of life insurance. So when she became ill, we had nothing to fall back on. So she ended up losing her job. She's a single mom. That's how we got into the predicament that we did. And pretty much all I can tell people is like to never give up. It can always get better. It might not seem like it at that time. It might not feel like it. You literally might feel like the entire world is on not only your shoulders, but like your chest. It is a suffocating feeling, but you really just have to like have a strong support system. Like I was blessed enough to have friends who I could stay with for a little while and I kind of just like hopped around, but I knew that I never wanted to stay in that situation. So I did pretty much everything I could to get myself out of that situation. I was working 3 jobs at one time, 4 jobs at one time, just
Wow.
so I always had something to do, somewhere to be. Because I also didn't want to feel like a burden, like staying with my friends all the time. So yeah, I pretty much worked my butt off to make sure that I got myself out of that situation. I'm still working as hard as I can to never be in that situation again and to make sure that my family is always going to be taken care of. So just if I can tell anyone one thing, it's just never give up because you never know what's around the corner.
Yeah, and it was something I always say, and all these kids here have had me at other times of their high school career, and I tell them on their first day of ninth grade that if you don't like the situation you're in, it's more than likely it's not your fault, especially when you're 14, 15 years old. You
Mhm.
know, there's a lot of things that happen in life that we can't help. There's a lot of things that we're born with that we didn't choose, but your path can only change if you're the one that decides to change it. And that goes for everybody, including me. And I
Yeah.
think that's a great example of there are people that fall into the trap of homelessness that was no fault of their own, but they let that define them. They don't
Mhm.
take those extra steps and do what they have to do and claw and scrape and work to get out of that. So that is a great testimony for yourself. And I think a great inspiration for young people that may unfortunately be stuck in that situation now.
Yeah, it's definitely difficult, especially when you're that young, because legally you cannot work in the United States at that age. So it can be a little more difficult to figure out the situations, especially when at 14 you shouldn't have to figure that out. You shouldn't have to do those things. So it's like you don't have the knowledge to really know what to do. But definitely, like I would still say, just like don't give up. Like where there's a will, there's a way. That it's a saying for a reason.
All right. So obviously, we got to talk about Squid Game.
Yeah.
I got to admit, I'm not a huge reality TV fan.
Mhm.
But if anybody did watch it or you haven't watched it, it was absolutely riveting. If you enjoyed the drama, I think you would enjoy the reality show. That's just my opinion. You were part of a really cool faction with the snack pack with Chad and Mai and Trey. Was it Trey? Was the other one?
It wasn't
Figgy.
officially in it, but Figgy
Yeah.
and Kiki were in it.
Yeah.
Trey
So I mean, just really cool. So we obviously want to talk about the action of the show, and it had to be really cool. You know, I was a huge TJ Ford fan, who was an NBA point guard who was on the show as well. So talk a little bit about how that process happened, because it really gave you exposure. It gave you a platform which you now have. So even though I know you didn't win as you hoped, it
yeah.
still really propelled you into the public eye and is really giving you a platform to really reach a lot of people like you are right now. So tell us how that whole process worked, because your video, the blogs of it are really interesting on how the whole process worked, because we obviously see the finished product, but a lot goes behind the scenes in the production of the television show.
Yeah, and actually I've been fighting myself. I should post a lot more behind the scenes like videos and kind of like vlogs about it because there's just so much. I could talk for days on end about this. Um, I would guess I'll start off with just like the casting process because a lot of people want to get cast. I was just, like I said, 100% transparent. I was myself. I will always be myself. So I just told my story and I was just me and they liked me. And the casting process was a lot longer for some people than it was for myself. Like I got a call back within a few days of me applying. Um,
Wow.
and then of course I had like back-to-back interviews. And then over the course of, I would say like 3 months, I had like the psych evals, all this, like the physical, all that stuff done. And then around December, I was told like, yeah, like you actually made it on the show. And that was great. Some people found out like 2 days before the show started that they got on. So I had a lot of time to kind of like plan for it. And some people just kind of like up and left their lives just to go on it. I was living in France at the time. I was teaching English as a foreign language and
Wow.
science in French. So it was definitely fun. And it was actually a lot easier for me to get to London where we filmed because I was in France. So it was only about a 2 hour flight, which was awesome. Uh, what else? Oh, today is actually the 1 year anniversary of Red Light, Green Light. So it's a
Wow.
very special day for all of us Squiddies out there because, well, at least those of us who made it to the dorms after Red Light, Green Light. Um, it was an intense contest that day. Like 1 year ago today, we all stood outside. Like it was like in a bunker, but it was freezing for about 9 hours.
Yeah,
Uh,
gone.
frozen in place for 20 to 40 minutes at a time. So everyone watching, that girl who was doing the squat, like she was holding that squat for like 20 or 30 minutes minimum.
Yeah,
So try
yeah.
to squat for 30 minutes and then tell me how
Yeah.
you feel after waiting for like 5 hours. Yeah, it was something that really pushed your boundaries. So not only like your physical boundaries, but your mental boundaries, because we were standing there in complete silence. You couldn't talk, you couldn't like you were afraid to breathe because you didn't want to like move too much. We had sensors all over us. There were drones flying around. There were people with binoculars. Like they were really on top of every little motion that people made. So we were all just scared the entire time, but
Wow.
making it to the dorms and then really starting to build up those relationships from day one of even being in red light, green light for so long. Like we were kind of trauma bonded together because we have gone through something that no one else has gone through and that no one else will understand except for us.
Yeah, now obviously we want to hear more about Squid Game, but you made a great point right there. And I had a guest earlier today from Dallas, and we talked about this because part of the strategy of the reality show was to network and to put yourself out there. And I think not only is that a great strategy for Squid Game, that's a great strategy for these kids about to get out of high school. Things are not just going to fall in your lap. Things
No.
aren't just going to happen for you. We have a lot of talented kids in here with me right now with all kind of plans, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to sell yourself. The part of the reason Maya won the show is because she could sell herself as a good player. Part of
Yeah.
the reason people made it as far as they did because they could sell themselves as a good player. The reason Jeff Bezos is so successful in business because he was able to sell Amazon. So if being able to network and step outside your comfort zone, because you literally have people from all over the world, people of all backgrounds. You had a former NBA player, and then you have people that used to be homeless. So you have to be able to connect with people you may be uncomfortable usually being around. And I think that is a great testimony of the show. And I think that's a great lesson that anybody, no matter what their plan is after high school, to really pay attention to.
Yes, networking is honestly, it's something that I've somehow always been good at. So I do attribute my being able to do well and make the relationships I did in the show. I attribute that to my networking skills. And that also just stemmed from me kind of being homeless, having to, for lack of a better word, like hustle and get what I needed to get out of life. I met a lot of people. And now traveling, I meet even more people and I tell them my story and I talk to them. And I feel like I can relate to so many people on so many different levels because I've done so many different things. So honestly, yes, if I could tell your students one thing, networking is super, super important. And it's one skill that transcends everything else. Absolutely everything else.
Yeah, and the old saying, I know they hear the old people say it all the time. It's not what you know, it's who you know. I'll
Yeah.
take it one step farther. I'll take it one step farther. It's not who you know, it's who knows you.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So yeah. So that was a little soapbox, but obviously after red light, green light, you had the game where you did the honeycomb, which
yeah.
was extremely traumatic just to watch because all the drama that went down. So
Yeah.
tell us about that second game with the I forget what it's called, I can't pronounce it, but
Albano.
yeah. So and I believe you had the circle, correct?
I did have the circle. Yes, I
So
did.
yeah. So
And
tell us
networking
about how
came into play
all
with
that
that
worked.
too. Yeah,
You say what?
networking came into play with that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, again, it's a game show, but I mean, as silly as it may sound, a lot of lessons could be learned by the way things were done on that show. So, tell us about how that one worked, and because that was a very high drama situation as well.
Yeah, so we walk into the white room after walking through the stairs probably like 4 or 5 times, um, just to get like all the perfect shots. And then we walk into this white room and we're just like, okay, what are we doing? Because we all assumed it was going to be the cookie challenge, but like we didn't know for sure, because we were like, oh, they might want to mix it up. But we walk into this white room and I said that morning, I said, if we're doing whatever challenge, if it's going to be Dalgona and they give us a chance, I don't care. I'm standing on line one. Like I told everyone, I'm just going to go straight to line one. So I'd already made up my mind because I was going crazy throughout the night, just like thinking about it, and kind of having this anxiety attack about it. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to go to line one, no matter what it is. I don't care if it's umbrella, star. I've already chosen. So I was very comfortable in that. So I walk in and there are 4 lines. I turn around, I tell everyone like, hey, you guys can like discuss it amongst yourselves, but I'm going to go over to line one. So that's where I went. And they were still like figuring it all out, but eventually everyone, not everyone, almost everyone in the snack pack ended up coming over to line one. But people were running in a line so quickly that if you ran out of spots, because there were only a set amount of spots per line, they told us that it had to be a certain amount of people. If you ran out, you kind of just had to go elsewhere, which is why Mai was not with us and Cookie was not with us as well. But we see the first group go and we're like, oh, okay, like they're taking 4 people. That's very strange. And then literally as you see it in the show, they just flash a screen up there and we get to see exactly what you guys saw. It looked edited, like it looked
Yeah.
amazing. And that was like raw footage. That wasn't edited at all. I don't know what kind of cameras they have, but it was the production value,
Yeah.
not spared. It looked amazing. And we got to watch that whole first group like kind of talk about it. They told them that they can't play any games in order to choose. And there was just like a whole bunch of other rules of how they could choose. Like they couldn't like fight for it or anything. Like there was no physicality involved. So when we saw the first group get eliminated, panic broke out. Like no one expected that to happen. It kind of set the tone for the rest of the game. Not just that specific game, but the rest of the Squid Game. The second group goes, everyone is like talking to them, like trying to like figure out like what they're going to do, get their game plan. Each line is kind of like hyping up their leader to not choose umbrella. And it's like they go in there and they just have to like fight it out amongst themselves and kind of like figure it out. Now, the third group that went, because the second group sadly got eliminated again, third group that went, I specifically went up to the line leaders. There was one line leader there in particular. Of course, Brighton was there. I did speak to Brighton. Brighton did not want to get eliminated. And we talked for like maybe half a second before his whole line was like up and screaming at him. I tried to talk to Spencer. Spencer was already freaking out. I was like, okay, I'm just going to leave you alone. I'm just gonna let you deal with whatever you have to deal with because you don't need me also like contributing to your meltdown right now. You have a lot of pressure on you. But then I also spoke to our line leader, of course, and then I spoke to Charlie, who was player 344. He was the one who put his hand on the wall first to claim the star. And we had been talking for a little bit beforehand, not too many conversations, but he was like a really nice guy. And we spoke and he knew why I was there. And he just kind of told me, he was like, I would rather take umbrella. I'm not giving you umbrella. Like there's nothing, you don't have to worry. You can go back to your line. I'm not going to give you guys umbrella. Like I'll take it before that happens. So that's another networking thing. Like if you have people who are willing to do things like that for you, I had people like vowing to throw marbles for me before I even got there, which unfortunately I didn't get there. But I mean, I had about 6 people who told me if I went up against them in marbles, they were going to throw it for me. They weren't even going to play.
Wow.
These are all networking things, but Dalgona, we got in there and we had Dr. Rick, who he's a Dalgona expert. He makes them at home. He does this at home. He bought some in the hotel when we were in quarantine to practice. So we all kind of just like gathered around because we had been also, I know he's part of the Gambu gang, but he and I have similar birthdays. So we bonded actually in the hotel around our birthdays. And he told me like, hey, come with me and I'll just help you through it and we'll work through it. So that's pretty much what we did. And they didn't really show it. And it's really sad, but Chad was struggling, 285. He was struggling really hard. And I sat there, I finished mine, but I sat there and I waited with him until he was done. And I refused to leave him because one snack pack member is never leaving the other snack pack members behind. Even though they show it like that on TV, I sat there and I waited for my members to be done because I was never going to.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know it's just a TV show, but a lot of people, I think, we've had other people from reality shows before, and they say even though a lot of it is production, it really gives you a chance to show who you really are.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I think they're bad sideshow, but a lot of people great sideshow. So if you haven't watched the show, I think it really gives you insight into how different people are. Now, real quick, before I get to because I got some great questions for you. You were eliminated in the third game, which caught everybody off guard. And I think that's another, you watch the show and everybody's warming up for tug of war.
Yeah.
And that is what happened. So just real quickly to take us through that, because even though I felt bad, that was still a huge curveball that was thrown at everybody.
Same thing. We walked into that white room. We saw 8 lines. We were like, all right, tug of war. Like we already know what's happening. We already know what's going on. People were already talking that morning of the game beforehand because they were like, oh, it's going to be tug of war. So you saw, of course, like a lot of the bigger guys kind of talking. And the same thing happened. At that point, it was hard. You had to choose between like your friends and like the bigger guys. Luckily, Chad is one of the biggest guys and he is my friend. But a lot of the other guys that I was friends with, they were on that first line where they thought it was going to be all brawn, but it wasn't. So we kind of figured out toward the end that it wasn't tug of war because of the time it took in between each set of teams going. Because tug of war would be like, you would think it would be like maybe like 20 minutes maximum for them to get all the angles and like everything. This was taking hours. And we were just like, what is going on in there? And we were the last group to go. So we were in there, we were in that white room just sitting there for probably about like 8 hours. Yeah, before we even played our game. So we figured it couldn't be tug of war at that point. Like we didn't know what it was, but we were like, there's no way possible that this could be tug of war unless they're making each person in each row like do like a 1v1 kind of style. But we had no idea. We had no idea. And when we walked in, it looked phenomenal. Like it looked amazing.
Yeah.
And I am disappointed about the way it came out. And you know, I won't be angry at production, but I did ask a specific question that would have propelled me to win my game that they refused to answer. So yeah, I mean, everything happens for a reason. I'm a firm believer in that, but I was mostly disappointed that it wasn't only me that was losing, like I was responsible or I take responsibility for other people losing, and they couldn't really do much. They stood there, and I did ask my team every time I went to take a shot, I asked them where they wanted me to shoot because it's not just my game that's on the line, it's also theirs.
Yeah.
So I felt as if they should have a voice in it, not too loud of a voice because they could hear you on the other side, but like I felt like they should have a say in what I was doing. So unfortunate the way it turned out, but I mean, it's a year ago.
Yeah, but again, gave you a great platform, and it's just really really cool to see all the different personalities. And I've reached out to a couple other cast members as well that hopefully I can have them join us as well. But I do have some questions I want to get to. I'll get to as many of these as I can.
Cool.
This first one is Deja Weaver. She's a senior, one of our volleyball players, and also part of our Technology Student Association that finished fourth in the nation in
Ooh,
digital video production last year. But she asked, "Do you think you would have been where you are now if you had not gone through the hardships like homelessness?"
no, I would not be the person that I am today if I didn't go through those hardships. They made me who I am. It made me never want to feel that feeling again. It made me want to provide for my family. And it drives me every single day. Everything I still do is so that I don't have to ever go back to that place. Um, and I just never want to feel that level of uncomfortability ever again. I don't want to have to want for anything. So I work for everything that I have. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. This is RJ Jones. He's a junior, also a member of our Technology Student Association. And he asked, what was the biggest motivation other than money to be on the show and be on and pursue even a semi career of acting?
So I, it's gonna sound terrible, but my biggest motivation obviously was the money, yes. But after that, I've always wanted to be on The Challenge. It's a show that started on MTV. It's probably
That the challenge is before their time. The Road
yeah,
Rules and Real
I was
World
like,
Challenges
I
are
don't even know if
great
they know it.
shows. Yeah.
Like, it is over 20 years old. Like, I don't even know if they know it, but that was my motivator. I was like, oh, if I do really well on this, like maybe I'll get a call for the challenge, and then I can really, because I've been an athlete since I was 7 years old. Like I have competed on very large scales. So I was like, oh, I would love to go on the challenge. So that was my secondary motivator. Like
That's
I
awesome.
just wanted to be on the challenge.
Here's a good one. This is Selena Johnson. She's a junior. And she asked, what was your biggest inspiration to want to get out of your bad situations?
My biggest inspiration, honestly, is just knowing that there was something better and that if I could just get out of the situation I was in, I could see what that something better was. So it was basically just like the unknown. I wanted to see what the unknown was. I wanted to see like mainly I wanted to see the world. I wanted to see the things that I never had the opportunities to see when I was growing up. I wanted to travel. I wanted to meet new people. I wanted to just feel what it felt like to be free because being poor and growing up and not really having like money, you just always feel kind of restricted. You feel like you're in a very closed place and you can't go anywhere. So I just always wanted to kind of just like break free and just be my own person, do my own thing, and just truly be happy. Like I want to be happy.
All right, this is Shania Kyle. She's one of our dancers here, and she's actually from Minnesota, but now she's here in Mississippi with us.
Oh,
But she's got a couple questions. The first one is, um, did being on Squid Game have an effect on your mental health?
it did. Oh my gosh, yes. We have psych evaluations before we go in, and they kind of like prepare you for what you are going to endure, but they don't really prepare you at all because it is such an intense process. Um, Watching your friends go, even though they didn't really pass away, seeing them get eliminated, it really did take a toll on you. There will be times when you feel like you got eliminated yourself when you see them walk out the door because you know what they were fighting for. So it was heartbreaking. And then, of course, getting eliminated myself, it took me about two, maybe 2.5 months to actually recover from it and be able to even talk about it without getting upset and crying. Because when you put so much on the line, like in my mind, I was like, I'm doing this strictly for my family. And my mom was very sick at the time. So it was kind of like a touch and go situation. So I really thought that it could be a matter of life and death for her, like me winning this money or not. Thankfully, she's okay now. But at that point, it was really intense. So it took me a lot of coping with the fact that there was nothing I could do about it. It was a game of luck, even though I had a little strategy to it. It's mostly a game of luck. There's nothing you
Oh,
can really.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like we said, I mean, spoiler alert, I mean, Maya was a winner and she was very good, but there was so much luck involved at the end. It really was. I mean, I was happy for her, but still, it was very lucky. Now,
Yeah.
her other question is, since you travel now and I enjoy your travel blogs, what is some tips for someone that might be interested in doing the same thing?
Oh, okay. So tips for doing the same thing is just actually doing it. I'm still trying to force myself to actually do it. But at you guys' age, it is so much easier. You're way better at technology than I am because you grew up with the technology. I didn't. You know how the TikToks work, you know how the reels work, you know how all these things work. So if you just go travel, like you don't have to travel extravagantly. You can travel on a budget. Go to like your next state over and do like a little travel vlog, travel video.
Yeah.
Start accumulating a following that way. And then people will just end up paying you to do stuff. So you can really just go for it. There's no
Yeah,
real.
and that's a good point because people want to talk about where we are, but here in the Jackson area, we're 3 hours away from four major cities, so it really is a good central location because New Orleans, Memphis, Birmingham, Shreveport are all within a 3 hours drive. So it really is a lot of places we can go that have a lot of great places to see. So
Yeah,
that's a
New
great
Orleans
point.
on my bucket list. So I
Yeah.
still haven't been to New Orleans and I'm trying to get there. So
Oh
if you
man,
can do it for
I'm
me,
there
yes.
all the time. I'll actually be there Thursday.
Oh,
Um, This is Cornell Bacon. He's a member of our bowling team, our football team, and basketball team. He kind of does it all here. He's a senior. Um, Now, he asked, did you have any support during the time you were homeless, and how did they help you if you had help?
yes, I had a lot of support. I had really good friends that allowed me to stay with them from time to time, as I mentioned. Even the friends who I couldn't necessarily stay with, like they would always like help me out. Like if they knew that I didn't have like money for lunch or something, they would just bring food from their house and just have me like eat lunch with them, certain things like that. I never was without clothes or anything like that, but for the most part, I had a really strong support system. And the friends that I had then are still my friends now, obviously. Like they're friends for life. They're basically family.
That's awesome. Now, this is Gavin Griffin. He's a senior. He was a member of our track team, member of our football team, and he
Ooh,
was
that's good.
Mississippi. He was Mississippi Mr. Football for 1A, and has some SEC visits coming up. So he's got hopefully a successful athletic career ahead of him, but he's also a great student. And he asked, what did it take for you to get to this point in your life to where you had no regrets?
Honestly, I don't know. That's such a good question because I think I was just born with this like weird thing where I just don't care as much as I probably should. So everything I've done, I've kind of done without regret. I was raised in a very strict, not even very strict, just like a very particular household. Like we were always in church. Um, we were always just like doing Bible studies, things like that. But I also wasn't restricted. Like I never had a curfew. I was never, there was not too much expected of me other than like, just be a good person, do this, do that. So just, I don't know, just living life and the experiences that I gained through my life and through my, even my hardships, I just learned like you can't really regret too much that you do because anything can be taken away from you at any time. So that includes life itself. Like there's
Yeah,
no guarantees on anything. So you might as well
yeah.
just get up while you got it.
That's a good point. And before I get to the last question, I got to send you this video we had last semester of a guy that lost the use of his legs. And he talked about, I may have lost the use of my legs. And I was like, look, that could happen to anybody because it was a freak accident where it happened. And I'll send you that. I'll send you that later. And he's got a great story as well. And he has kind of the same attitude you have of, you know, there's things may have happened, but look at what I can do. It's
Yeah.
really, really cool. But I just got one more. This is Christian Wolf, and he asked, "What was the hardest part of being on a television show with the cameras always following you around?"
Ah, what was it? It was probably the pressure to not look disgusting all the time. 'Cause think about it, like you're waking up in the morning, like you know your breath stinks. Like I had braids in my hair, so that was fine. But like some of these girls woke up and I was just like, what is that on your head? Like, what is going on? But it was mostly just like just this feeling like everyone is watching me at all times. I feel like I can't be myself or I can't just do like things I would usually do. But after like a few days, you kind of just like forgot that the cameras were there. Like you know you can see them, you know that they're there, but you just kind of forget because you get so encapsulated in all your new friends and all their stories and everything. You open up and you can actually just be yourself. So a lot of what we were doing on that show was not televised because we were just being weirdos and like I don't think it would have made for like suspenseful TV or like dramatic TV because we're all actually really friendly in there. I would say until even like the top 10, there were no real arguments. Like they kind of made us like have drama with certain things, but everyone loved each other, which is I
Yeah,
thought was really funny because they thought that they were going to get a huge cast of like drama filled people, and we all just like went in there and became like the best of friends.
that's awesome. Now we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for joining us. But
Sure.
before we go, a couple things. First of all, tell us where to find you on socials because you're a great follow, and you got the YouTube channel.
All right, so everything is at Brownie Bits, so at Brownie underscore BITZ. So if you go on my YouTube, I'm the traveling brownie, but if you type it in the URL, it's youtube.com/brownie underscore BITZ. TikTok, brownie underscore BITZ. Instagram, same thing. And I really don't know how to work anything other than Instagram. So good luck with all my updates because they probably won't be.
Yeah, and you've got some great stuff. And obviously, if you haven't, everybody, if you haven't watched the Squid Game challenge, you need to watch it. Made for great television. Like I said, I'm not even a big reality TV fan, and I couldn't stop watching. I binged it. So, but before we go, you're not much older than these kids. It wasn't that long ago where you were in school as well. You grew up, as you said, not a lot of money as a black girl in America, facing the same struggles these kids are going to face.
Yeah.
So we'll have a lot of kids that'll see this later that may be in similar situations. We have kids with me right now that are just a few months away from graduating from high school that are getting ready to face a tough, cruel world, whether they like it or not. So
Yeah.
what can they do now? Because obviously everybody don't want to be on TV because some of these I can't even get them to talk. But we talked about networking, we talked about building your brand and selling yourself and being confident through all the struggles. What can they do now to best prepare themselves for the challenges that are definitely going to come?
I honestly, the biggest thing I can say is just be humble because if you don't, this world will humble you in a heartbeat. So you got to be humble. You can't go anywhere expecting that you know everything there is to know. Learning is the biggest thing that has propelled me to where I am today. Um, I went to study neuroscience, biological chemistry. Like I now study insurances so I can like better my family's life and other families' lives and teach them financial literacy. That's also a big thing, financial literacy. But I would
Yeah,
just,
and we got some people speaking on that later. So believe me, that will not be
yeah,
missed.
yes, but learn as much as you can and just be open to absorb everything from every direction, no matter where it's coming from. It could be a stranger on the street and they can drop some gems on you. So just be open and willing to just like take everything in.
Absolutely. Well, again, we thank you so much for joining us all the way from New Jersey. Amanda Brown, player 258 on Squid
Yeah.
Game Challenge, the Brownie Bits, the Traveling Brownie on YouTube. Thank you again so much for taking some time for us.
Of course. And I hope you guys have a great, great, great rest of your day. And I don't know if it's snowing over there, but good luck to you guys because it's finally stopped snowing over here.
Yeah, it got cold, but it wasn't snowing. But again, thank you so much. It was great to finally meet you.
Of course, you as well.
All
Bye,
right, talk to you soon, buddy.
guys.